Book of Heaven, Volume 24, Part 8. June 20th, 1928. God is one single act. Example of the Son. One who lives in the divine will lives in this single act and feels all of its effects. Value of what is done in the divine will. How Jesus, who had always been with his mother, moved away when he carried out his public life. Application to the soul. My abandonment in the supreme Fiat and my flight in all of its acts are continuous, and while going around in the creation, I was thinking of the order and harmony of all things, and of the multiplicity of the acts of the eternal volition in the whole universe. But while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, God is one single act, and if many acts can be seen in creation, they are nothing other than the effects of the one act of God." It happens as to the sun. The sun is one. Its light is one. But as its light touches the earth and rapidly extends over it, the effects of it are innumerable. It can be said that it produces a distinct effect over each thing it touches, distinct in the color, in the sweetness, and in the substance it infuses in each thing it touches with its hands of light. It seems that the sun creates many subsequent acts, one more beautiful than the other. But it is not true. They are nothing other than the effects of its one act of light. In fact, the strength of one single act has the virtue of producing many effects, as if they were many subsequent and distinct acts, as indeed they are. So everything you see in the whole universe are nothing other than the effects of the one single act of God. And because it is one single act, it possesses the virtue of order and harmony in all the effects it produces. The same happens with the soul who lives in my divine will. By living in the one act of God, she feels all the effects of that single act of God in all of her acts. She feels within herself the order, the harmony, the beauty, the strength of the one divine act that more than light produces so many effects that she feels heavens, suns, seas, flowery fields, and everything good present in heaven and on earth being produced in her acts. What can one who lives in my will not enclose of what is great, of what is good? Everything. She is the true sun that, in whatever it does and touches, produces various tints of beauty, of sweetness, of goodness, and of multiple effects, because all of its acts hang upon the one act of He who created it. After this, I was thinking of the great good that what is done in the divine will encloses. Its great good. And my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, What is done in my divine will encloses an incalculable value. It is as if the soul had two scale pans in her hands, placing in each pan an object of equal weight and of equal value. One is the weight of these objects, one the value, one the price that she can collect. Now, in one pan, God places his will. In the other, the soul places what she does in it. As the two pans rise, they remain perfectly balanced, and they both elevate to the same level, because since the will of God and that of the soul are one, wherever it operates, whether in God or in the creature, one is the value. My will alone elevates the soul to the likeness of her Creator. What is done in it places her in the order of the divine works. After this I was feeling oppressed, and I thought to myself, what a change! Before, my sweet Jesus would come always. It seemed that he was unable to, nor could be without me. And now, days upon days, and he does not hasten at all, nor does he run toward me as he used to do before, when he sees that I cannot take any more. It seems that when he comes, it is to say things that regard his fiat. It seems that this alone interests him. My extreme need of him no longer makes a breach into him. Now, while I was thinking of this and other things, he moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, I am behaving with you as I did with my mamma. During my life, we always lived life together, except for the 3 days when I was lost. As for the rest, wherever the mother was, there was the son, and wherever the son was, there was the mother. We were inseparable. Then, when the fulfillment of redemption came, and I had to carry out my public life, we separated, even though the one will that animated us kept us always identified with each other. However, it is certain that our persons were far away from each other. One was in one place, one in another. And since true love is unable to, nor can be separated for too long from the beloved, because they feel the irresistible need to rest one within the other, and to confide to each other their secrets, the outcome of their undertakings, and their sorrows. This is why now I would make my little escapes to see her again. Now the Queen Mother would leave her nest to see again her son, who wounded her from afar. And again we would separate to give course to the work of redemption. So I am doing with you. Before, I used to be with you always, as indeed I am still now. But since we must work for the kingdom of my divine will, and you must fling yourself into its acts, the work seems to move us away from each other. And while you work, I work in preparing more work for you to do, by making known to you more things regarding my fiat, and what you must follow in it. But I come back often to receive and to give you rest. Therefore, do not be surprised. This is required by the great work of the Fiat Voluntas Tua on earth as it is in heaven. So, trust me and do not fear. June 25th, 1928. Everything that is done in the Fiat acquires the continuous act, without ever ceasing. Example of the Son. The purpose of Jesus going into the desert. The pains of isolation. I was praying, and feeling my extreme misery, I prayed my celestial mamma to give me her love to make up for my meager love. But while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, my mamma did her first love and her first act in the divine will, and since it was done in it, it possesses the continuity, as if it were always in act, loving and operating. Her love never ends. Her works act as the continuous repeaters, in such a way that whoever wants to take her love finds it always in act, while it is the effect of the first love that is repeated, and repeated always. Such is one who operates in my will. Her acts acquire the continuity. They are always repeated without ever ceasing. They are the true sun, that from the moment it was created by God, gave its first act of light, but so great as to fill heaven and earth with one single act. And it repeats this act always, without ever ceasing, in such a way that all can take its act of light, though one was the act that constituted itself act of perennial light for all. And if the sun could repeat its act of light, one would see as many suns for as many acts as it could repeat. But since one was the act of light it did, one sees only one sun, and no more. But what the sun did not do, the sovereign queen did, and one who operates in my will also does. As many suns for as many acts, and these suns are fused together, though distinct among themselves, in beauty, in light, in the glory that they give to their Creator, and in the universal good that they make descend upon all creatures. These acts have a divine power, and just as by virtue of these acts the most holy Virgin could obtain the coming of the Word upon earth, by virtue of them my kingdom will come upon earth. An act repeated incessantly in my fiat possesses a conquering, enrapturing, and enchanting virtue before our divinity. That continuous repeating in the divine volition is the strength of the soul, the invincible weapon that debilitates her Creator and conquers him with weapons of love. And he feels honored to let himself be conquered by the creature. After this, I was continuing my round in the divine Fiat, and in following my Jesus on the way to the desert, I thought to myself, and why did Jesus take the way of the desert? There were no souls to be converted there, but profound solitude, while it was souls that he was searching for. But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, company breaks the pain and diminishes it, while isolation concentrates it, doubles it, and makes it harsher." And I wanted to go into the desert, to feel in my humanity all the harshness of the isolation that my divine will had suffered for many centuries on the part of creatures. My humanity was to ascend into the divine order and descend into the human order, to be able to enclose the pains of both one and the other, and taking upon myself entirely the painful part that divided man and God, have men cling once again to the embrace, to the kiss of their Creator. But the purpose of my going into the desert was not only this. You must know that our adorable Majesty, in forming the creation, established that every place was to be populated by inhabitants, and that the earth was to be extremely fertile and rich, with abundant plants, in such a way that all would have in abundance. As man sinned, he drew upon himself the indignation of divine justice, and the earth remained deserted, infertile, and in many places depopulated. Image of those sterile families in which there is no laughter, no feast, no harmony, because without children there is no one who breaks the monotony of the two spouses, and the nightmare of isolation weighs on their hearts, leading them to sadness. On the other hand, where there are children, there is always something to do, to say, and occasions to celebrate. Such was the human family. Look at the sky, how populated with stars it is. The earth was to be the echo of the sky, crammed with inhabitants, and it was to produce so much as to render everyone rich and happy. As man withdrew from my will, his lot changed, and I wanted to go into the desert in order to call back the blessings of my celestial Father, and, by calling my will to reign again, restore the earth, populate it everywhere, and fecundate it, in such a way that the earth will produce more seeds, and more beautiful ones, such as to increase it 100-fold, rendering it more fecund and of radiant beauty. How many great things will the kingdom of my divine Fiat do? So much so that all the elements are all in waiting, the sun, the wind, the sea, the earth, and all creation, to deliver from their womb all the goods and effects that they contain. In fact, since the divine will that dominates them does not reign in the midst of creatures, they do not put out all the goods they enclose within themselves. giving them only what they have to, as alms, and as to servants. So the earth has not produced all the seeds. The sun, not finding all the seeds, does not produce all the effects and goods it possesses. And so with all the rest. This is why all await the kingdom of the Fiat, to show creatures how rich they are, and how many admirable things the Creator has placed in them for love of the ones who were to be the children of His will. June 29th, 1928. The I love you forms the heat, the divine will the light, in order to form the sun. The long offspring formed by one who lives in the Fiat. Its 3 kingdoms, 3 suns, and 3 crowns. How faith will no longer be shadowed. I was doing my usual acts in the divine Fiat, and for each created thing I repeated my long sing-song of my I love you. But while doing this, I thought to myself, I have become so used to it that it seems I cannot do without saying, I love you, I love you. Now, at that moment, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, telling me, my daughter, this continuous I love you of yours is nothing other than the continuity of the first I love you said in my divine will, that pronounced one time has the virtue of repeating, with facts, what was said once. The I love you forms the heat, and my divine will forms the light, that invading the I love you forms the sun, one more radiant than the other. How beautiful is the life of the soul in my divine will. She acquires a long offspring, almost interminable. In fact, if she thinks, she gives birth to her thoughts within the divine mind, forming the long generation of her children in the mind of her celestial Father. If she speaks, she gives birth to her words within the Word of God, forming the long generation of the children of her Word. If she operates, if she walks, if she palpitates, she gives birth to her works within the hands of her Creator, her steps within the divine feet, her heartbeats within the paternal heart, forming the long generation of the children of her works, of her steps, and of her heartbeats. What an endless generation she who lives in my will forms for her Creator. She is the populator and the fecund mother that keeps He who created her always in feast, because each child is a feast that God feels being given birth within His womb by she who lives in His will. And all moved, he repeated, how beautiful she is! How beautiful is the newborn of my will! In her littleness, she would want to engage in a competition with her Creator. She would want to give him the occasion to always smile, and with childlike surprises, capture him, so as to be always gazed upon, to show him the long generation of her children. And as though fainting with love, he remained silent. But a little later he added, "My daughter, the creature has 3 kingdoms in her soul that are her 3 powers. These can be called the capitals of these 3 kingdoms, while all the rest of the creature, words, eyes, works, steps, are cities, villages, rivers, seas, and territories that form these kingdoms. The heart itself cannot be called a capital, but the most important city of communication for the others. Now, in a war, if the capital is conquered, the war ends, because all other cities are conquered along with the capital. Now, if my will arrives at taking over the 3 capitals of these kingdoms, raising its throne in them, all the other cities will be conquered and dominated by the supreme Fiat. How much glory these kingdoms will acquire! They will be the happiest, the richest, and most populated ones, because he who rules them and dominates them is the invincible, the strong, the powerful. No one will dare to molest and disturb their order. Everything will be peace, joy, and perennial feast. So those who live in my divine Fiat will possess 3 sons, one more beautiful than the other, 3 peaceful kingdoms, enriched with all the joys, harmonies, and happinesses. And they will be crowned with 3 crowns. But do you know who will crown the forehead of the children of my will? The sacrosanct Trinity. Enraptured by their likeness that they infused in them in creating them, seeing that our Fiat has raised them and formed them as we wanted, and wounded at the sight of our own features in them. The ardor of our love will be so great that each of the 3 divine persons will place his own crown as the special distinctive sign that they are children of our divine will. Then I was feeling so immersed in the supreme Fiat that I felt like a sponge soaked with its light. It seemed to me that all created things were bringing me the kiss of the divine volition, and in that kiss I could feel the lips of my Creator impressing it on me. It seemed to me that the Fiat was carrying the 3 divine persons with itself. Now, while I was feeling my mind dissolved in the light of the Fiat, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, when my will has its kingdom upon earth and souls live in it, faith will no longer have any shadow, no more enigmas, but everything will be clarity and certainty. The light of my volition will bring in the very created things the clear vision of their Creator. Creatures will touch him with their own hands in everything he has done for love of them. The human will is now a shadow to faith. Passions are clouds that obscure the clear light of it, and it happens as to the sun when thick clouds form in the lower air. Even though the sun is there, the clouds advance against the light, and it seems it is dark, as if it were night-time. And if one had never seen the sun, he would find it hard to believe that the sun is there. But if a mighty wind dispelled the clouds, who would dare to say that the sun does not exist, as they would touch its radiant light with their own hands? Such is the condition in which faith finds itself, because my will does not reign. They are almost like blind people who must believe others that a God exists. But when my divine fiat reigns, its light will make them touch the existence of their Creator with their own hands. Therefore, it will no longer be necessary for others to say it. The shadows, the clouds, will exist no more. And while he was saying this, Jesus made a wave of joy and of light come out of his heart that will give more life to creatures. And with emphasis of love, he added, "How I long for the kingdom of my will! It shall put an end to the troubles of creatures and to our sorrows. Heaven and earth will smile together. Our feasts and theirs shall reacquire the order of the beginning of creation. We will place a veil over everything, so that the feasts may never again be interrupted." You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 24, Part 8. Fiat.